Every trader dreams of the perfect setup. That one entry so clean, so precise, that it feels almost effortless. But here's the truth Julian Robertson understood better than anyone. Perfection isn't in the market. It's in the mind preparing to face it. Julian didn't chase perfection in price action. He built it in preparation, through a 5-step checklist that turned chaos into clarity. A mental ritual he followed before every position, no matter how certain the opportunity seemed. They called him the tiger, but he didn't roar, he calculated. He waited, stalked, and studied the landscape until conviction wasn't emotional. It was inevitable. That was his secret. Not a single strategy, not an indicator, but a system of thought so disciplined that every trade felt like a reflection of his inner balance. Robertson used to tell his team at Tiger Management, "We don't take trades because we're excited. We take trades because we're prepared." And that became his obsession, building a checklist of readiness. 5 steps that filtered emotion from logic, impulse from insight. But before we get to those steps, you have to understand something deeper. Julian's world wasn't like ours. No real-time data feeds, no social media noise, no Reddit hype storms. Just a man, a thesis, and time. He was forced to rely on one thing modern traders often ignore: mental clarity. And to him, clarity came from process. He believed every great trade began not with a chart, but with a question. Do I truly understand what I'm risking my capital and my psychology on? That's where the checklist began. Step 1 wasn't about profit targets or entries. It was about context. Robertson's first move was always to zoom out macroeconomically, emotionally, and even spiritually. He'd ask, what world am I trading in? Not just what's the price doing, but what's the world feeling? Because he knew markets don't move because of charts. They move because of people. And people move because of emotion. This mindset traces back to Jesse Livermore, the man Robertson admired and often quoted. Livermore said, "The market is never wrong. Opinions often are." Robertson took that as gospel. He trained himself to strip opinion from observation, to study cause, not consequence. When tech stocks boomed, he studied the psychology beneath the euphoria. When currencies crashed, he sought the fear beneath the numbers. That's the first truth of his checklist. You don't look for setups. You look for stories. Because every trade is a narrative, and your job as a trader is to find where that story is about to change. Julian Robertson didn't enter trades to predict. He entered to participate in human behavior. That's why he said his edge wasn't in knowing where prices go, but in knowing why they go there. And that's what separates professionals from amateurs. The amateur chases reaction. The professional studies intention. So when Robertson sat before a trade setup, his first step was clarity. A deep understanding of the world behind the chart. He never wanted to react to the market. He wanted to understand its heartbeat. Because once you know the pulse, you can feel the rhythm. And once you feel the rhythm, you can anticipate the next move. If you had Julian Robertson's discipline, what would be your first step before any trade? Would you open the chart or analyze the story behind it? Comment your thoughts below. Because in the next section, we're stepping deeper into the inner conflict every trader faces when analysis meets emotion, and how Julian's second step in his checklist protected him from the chaos that destroys most traders. Every trader faces the same paradox. We say we want to win, but what we truly crave is certainty. And certainty doesn't exist. Julian Robertson knew this. He called it the invisible trap, the point where analysis turns into illusion. He said, the moment you believe you've figured the market out, the market starts figuring you out. That's why his second rule on the checklist wasn't about data or entry points. It was about self-audit. Before every trade, Robertson asked himself, am I emotionally neutral? Neutral. Not optimistic. Not fearful. Neutral. Because neutrality is the only state from which truth can be seen clearly. Julian knew that once emotion enters your analysis, your logic becomes hostage. You start bending facts to fit feelings. You start hunting for confirmation instead of clarity. That's when traders stop being predators and become prey. And here's the irony. The better you are at analysis, the more dangerous this trap becomes. Because you start believing your own brilliance. You start thinking you can't be wrong. Robertson fought that arrogance with ritual. He surrounded himself with people who disagreed. He once said, "I never wanted yes men. I wanted people who'd tear my ideas apart until only conviction remained." That was step 2 of his checklist. Emotional neutrality through intellectual conflict. He didn't just test his trades against data. He tested them against ego. Then came step 3, position sizing. And this was the art form that defined him. Julian didn't scale into positions randomly. He built size like a chess player builds a checkmate, patiently, position by position, controlling the board. He taught his traders that position sizing isn't math, it's psychology. Because how you size a trade reveals what you really believe. He said, if you can't sleep at night, your position's too big. If it doesn't move your pulse at all, it's too small. That was his equilibrium. Just enough exposure to feel alive, but not enough to lose control. But beneath that structure was the eternal conflict every trader faces. Can you trust your conviction without falling in love with it? Can you build size without letting size build your ego? That's the razor's edge Robertson walked every day. Because conviction without control becomes chaos. And caution without courage becomes stagnation. He believed every great trade requires a paradoxical balance, the confidence to strike, and the humility to walk away. This is where most traders fail. They either trade too scared or too certain. Julian lived in the space between, where uncertainty became power and discipline became freedom. He used to tell his team, the best traders aren't fearless, they're fear-aware. That's what Livermore meant too, decades earlier, when he said, a man must believe in himself and his judgment if he expects to make a living, but he must not believe blindly. Robertson carried that lesson in every move, every pause, every breath before an order was executed. And that's why his 5-step checklist wasn't a system, it was a state of mind. So let me ask you, when you take your next trade, will you truly be neutral? Or will your hidden emotions already be writing the story? Comment your thoughts below, because in the next section, we step into the final battlefield, where Julian Robertson's checklist collides with the hardest truth of all. Even the perfect setup means nothing. If your psychology collapses under pressure, there's a moment right before every trade when time slows. Your analysis is done. Your logic is sound. But your mind starts whispering, what if you're wrong? Julian Robertson understood that whisper. He called it the final filter, the last and hardest step of his 5-step checklist. He believed every trader must pass one test before pressing the button. Am I emotionally prepared for this trade to go against me? If the answer was no, he didn't trade, no matter how good the setup looked, because he knew that the market's cruelty isn't in the loss itself. It's in the loss of control that follows it. Robertson's 4th step was risk containment. Not risk management, risk containment. He designed his trades as if they were wild animals, powerful but caged within rules. He'd size positions with clear exit points before entry. He'd plan not just the trade, but the response to every possible outcome. It wasn't pessimism, it was professionalism. He once said, you can't control the outcome, but you can control your exposure to it. And that simple truth became his armor. Because he knew the most dangerous words in trading were, it'll come back. That's where Jesse Livermore's ghost haunted every great trader. Livermore, The man who made and lost fortunes once said, "The only thing to do when a man is wrong is to be right by ceasing to be wrong." Robertson carried that wisdom like scripture. He would rather take 10 small losses than one ego-driven disaster. He wasn't afraid to admit defeat, because to him, loss was feedback, not failure. Then came the final step post-trade reflection. It was the step most traders skip, but the one that made him legendary. After every trade, win or lose, he'd dissect not the chart, but himself. He'd ask his team, was this trade executed from logic or from emotion? And if the answer wasn't clear, he'd label the trade as dangerous no matter how profitable it was. Because profit earned from bad process isn't success, it's seduction. And seduction, in trading, is fatal. Robertson once told a young trader who'd made a quick fortune, "You're not rich, you're lucky." And luck is what destroys most traders who mistake it for skill. That's the heart of his mental architecture. Trading wasn't about chasing winning. Streaks it was about building mental sustainability. Because he knew, sooner or later, every trader meets the same truth. You don't blow up because you're wrong. You blow up because you can't emotionally survive being wrong. That's the real psychological trap. And that's why his 5-step checklist wasn't about entries. It was about endurance. To think like Julian Robertson, you have to build emotional systems stronger than your technical systems. You must create rules that protect you from your own certainty. You must treat every position like a loaded weapon handled with respect, executed with precision, and reviewed with humility. Because in the end, the perfect setup isn't about where you enter the market. It's about how you enter your own mind. So tell me, what's the one rule you follow before pressing that buy or sell button? Do you prepare like Julian Robertson, or do you still trade on impulse? Comment your thoughts below.